back. I have no risk tolerance for a bad haircut. None. So while I'm willing to deal with certain kinds of things, I'm not willing to deal with others. Everybody has a different risk tolerance. If you're doing a presentation, what if they say yes? That's your goal. They want them to come and agree to what you want them to do. What if they say no? Do you have your personal plan B? Are you prepared for your decision makers to not agree with what you have to say? But as a part of your recommendation, have you considered their risk tolerance? What if you make a recommendation that they don't like? What if your recommendation isn't fitting comfortably with their view of the world? Do you have a plan B? That's what the risk and contingency plan is. It's kind of a set of what ifs. Planning assumptions. This is one of my favorites. Nobody knows what planning assumption is. You all made planning assumptions when you got here. You put your money down because your planning assumption said there'll be money in the bank. I'm assuming that I have money in my bank. It's a part of my planning assumption. I'm assuming that I'll be able to get here at the right time. I'm talking to a friend of mine, and she's applying for, she wants to become a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley or something. And she's become involved in the community of people who have MS. Her sister has MS. And so while we're talking about her business plan and how she wants to do that, I said, well, why don't you consider the fact that you are involved in the MS community and they need financial advisors, because as soon as somebody finds out that they've got MS, all of the planning assumptions associated with their life from that moment forward have been upended. So we have planning assumptions for, am I going to be able to make it to the birthday party? We have planning assumptions associated with where we're going to be in life. We have planning assumptions concerning whether or not we're going to have 2 kids or 4 or none. And they make a difference. My planning assumption when I was 21 years old was I was never going to get married, I wasn't ever going to have kids, I was going to live to 95. That was my planning assumption. So I meet a guy when I'm 40, and you know when you get to that age, in the first date. So what do you want to do when I get married? I said, I don't want you married. And he went, cool. So you don't want to have kids? I said, I'm married. Well, that planning assumption didn't work out. Never did I think I'd be a married lady. It's very weird. We get married 10 years after we're going to have 10 years. Okay, all right. He ultimately asked pretty early. Let me give him a 10-year time frame. Okay. he asked pretty early in the process, and I went, let me think about it. I thought about it for another 9 years. Finally, we concluded that we were simply condemned to each other. Now, he's the guy who's all about performing arts. Okay? Shakira. Anybody here familiar with Shakira? All right, the phrase condemned to each other is from the lyrics from a Shakira song. He hears that phrase and he goes, you know, that's us. We're not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We're stuck. We might as well put together a couple of planning assumptions for the rest of our lives. One of the planning assumptions basically being one of us is going to get sick one day and we need someone who's got it together. That could be a planning assumption. Planning assumptions concerning health care, who's going to have it, who's not. These are made all the time. That's what a planning assumption is. You're working on a project at work. What are the planning assumptions? The thing that's really tricky about planning assumptions, half the time nobody tells you what they are. Maybe more than half the time. Nobody's explicit when they say, here's our planning assumption. They don't tell you. What? I heard something. Okay. Oh, air conditioner. All right. Planning assumption is air. Even if they don't tell you, and in fact, especially when they don't tell you what the planning assumptions are, you write them down and you put them in your recommendation. Because it's the only way you're going to find out whether or not you're on the same page. Mm-hmm. One of the best things I ever learned at the phone company when it came to doing numbers or came to putting together proposals or presentations or anything, especially numbers, are what are the assumptions? When I taught business plan development at the graduate school level, I said, you write down the planning assumptions. Because what will happen is somebody makes you a proposal. If you examine the assumptions, forget the proposal, all you ever have to do is examine the assumptions. If they're not assuming what you're assuming, already you know that proposal isn't going to be a good proposal. But you don't give anybody any useful, actionable information if you don't have a discussion concerning the plan. So if we had gone out to lunch and I had said, oh, listen, you know, we just want to eat. My planning assumption is we want to eat half hour and a half. And the other person said, oh, no, I thought we'd treat ourselves to a 2-hour meal. We were coming from different directions. We had different planning assumptions. It becomes a point of discussion. All right. At the end of the program, at the end of your prep work, that's when you go and look back at your selection criteria one more time and see whether or not you met your first results. Now you're saying to me, you know, I did all this work. I did all of this research. I spent 4 months working on this project. I spent 5 months doing all of this effort, interviewing people, talking to people, doing, you know, reading magazines, reading articles, reading, research. And you've already told me that I can't use anything that's irrelevant. I can only use what's relevant. And I got 15 minutes and I can only use the highlights. All of your research will come in at the Q&A. They're going to ask you a question and either you can answer it or you can't. That's it. But you cannot project, you cannot forecast up front what it is they really want to know. So don't even try. This is my favorite. The timing was perfect. This is Dilbert. I was putting this proposal, this presentation together. This was in April 4th. Today's May 11th. Philadelphia Inquirer. And I went, oh my God, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. It's perfect.
April 4th.
So I need you. Are there any questions?
I actually have a question. I mean, you obviously won't know the specific questions that they might ask.
Yeah.
But can you, at the beginning of your presentation, at the beginning of your talk, ask them, you know, this is what I'm going to cover in the next 15 minutes.
Right.
What would you like me to emphasize or make sure I address in my presentation? So that at least you get a sense in the room, is there something that they're more interested in than others?
You know, you can do it in an informal arrangement, or you can do it something like this. If you've got 15 minutes with the CEO and you say, oh, by the way, what do you want me to talk about?
Mm-hmm. Well, just emphasis. Emphasis, right. Okay.
I don't think the same thing. It depends upon the environment, it depends on how much time. But at the end, you can say, did I address all of the issues? Was there anything that I left out? Was there something else that you would like me to talk about? Because sometimes you get 15 minutes, you get 10 minutes. All right? I got 45. And you guys can pick up and leave now, or you can leave later, but it's a whole different experience than what's going on when you're in a very formal business environment where you need to be able to make the decisions, where someone's making decisions for you or with you. If you've got 15 minutes, You ever see a CEO schedule? Or your boss's schedule? All right? I'm pretty loosely structured. Okay? So I try not to make appointments too close to each other. I know people who schedule 10, 10, 15, 10, 30, 10, 45. I don't know how they function. I don't know how they do it. But if you're talking to someone like that, and you start out with, well, Mr. Trump has some really wonderful deals, they're going to say, well, yeah, what do you do? I'll talk to you. It depends upon you have to gauge it. Yes.
In an upcoming presentation, I'll be having to tell a senior partner in a company where I'm working that their suggested way of conducting an intervention isn't the right way. They love that way. They wanted to have a webinar, a live webinar, where they take the stage and talk. And that's the wrong way to achieve what they want to achieve. I'll present the right way, but it will come up. Where's the webinar part?
Okay.
So how,
put in a little webinar.
Yeah. So give them what they want, and size matters.
Size always matters.
Size always matters.
Never did that to me.
If you want to give the executive credit, okay, if that's a big if, all right, then there's something that they're thinking about because that they want a webinar. They got something in mind.
Yeah.
You might want to find out what that is.
I know what it is, yeah. Okay.
What is it?
So give...
It may not be the webinar.
They jumped to a solution.
They got a lot of attention when they did a webinar before.
Okay.
They liked that. Yeah.
So interesting.
They like that.
A lot of times, I'm going through that now, where I'm thinking from a training perspective, ROI, efficiency, effectiveness, engagement, it's all like I have my story. They want a new toy. You know, it's like we had great success with video podcasts a year or so ago. We're steadily reporting on there. And then all of a sudden it's like restlessness. Like, well, what's new? What do you mean what's new? Scores have been, they want a new toy. So now it's, do I get, the adult learning theory and perfect what's already there, take it to the next level? Or, fight the trainer in me, put that aside, find a new toy.
Is there a way to meld it?
Well, there can be, but when you're looking at existing opportunities and that you want to address to make what you're doing better,
right?
You have to, I guess, for the sake of the business and what the audience wants, kind of put that aside and start doing research on the new toy and looping it back into how it can help the effectiveness of the training.
Or as a part of your recommendation, you can simply say one of the things that I'm going to recommend is that we examine the effectiveness of the new toy.
Yeah. Right.
And say, but up until we've done that homework and research, we're going to go with the old toy.
That's good because under the threat of accountability for their recommendation and all the other things that will work,
and
they might not want it.
new toys.
Yeah. Sometimes they want to be able to speak and say, well, our team has a new toy. We're going to figure out what the effectiveness of it is, but in the meantime, they have the power statement of this is the new toy. So it's interesting to try to, yes, measure the effectiveness of the new toy, but now we're creating it. So for me, for example, it's mobile training. Do we really need it? No, not really. Is it really going to boost everything? No, not really. But it'll be a new toy. Will it work? Sure, it'll work. Yes, we'll find a way to increase engagement and make it fun. But
it's also about, maybe a different generation.
Yeah.
All right, because I'm getting questions already.
And I kind of read in your example.
Is the book on a smartphone?
Right.
The novelty itself has impact.
That's exactly
which
right.
has some value.
Novelty has impact, but one of the other things that I've always found really interesting about whatever level, okay, all right, is that when they get together, they're playing who's doing what, okay? Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter what